All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to talk about the single biggest change that taught Google how to actually understand you, not just the words you type. Seriously, this is the story of how search learned to think.
You know that feeling, right? Something we totally take for granted now. You type in this long, complicated question, and bam, Google just gets it. It's almost like it's reading your mind. But you know, it wasn't always this good. This incredible skill has a very specific origin story.
So to really get what's happening now, we have to jump in our time machine and go back to the world before 2013. Back then, finding answers online felt less like a conversation and way more like a really frustrating game of keyword bingo.
Yeah, the old Google was basically a gigantic, super fast index. And look, it was brilliant at matching the exact words from your search to the words on a web page. But here's the catch. It often completely missed the intent, the real meaning behind your search. It just didn't get the context, which meant you got a lot of weird, irrelevant results, especially if you dared to ask a longer question.
And this right here, this slide just nails the difference. On the left, that's how we all used to search. We had to chop up our thoughts into these little keywords we thought a machine would get. We literally had to think like a computer. But on the right, that's us today, just asking a normal question. This is the moment the machine finally started to think more like us.
So what happened? What was this huge shift? Well, in September of 2013, Google rolled out a change that hit nearly 90% of all searches worldwide. And let me be clear, this wasn't some little tweak. This was a complete and total brain transplant for the biggest search engine on the planet.
You see, what really made Hummingbird different from other updates you might have heard of like Panda or Penguin is that those were more like tune-ups. They targeted specific problems, spammy links, bad websites. But Hummingbird? No, that wasn't a tune-up. It was a complete teardown and rebuild from scratch, and its one and only goal was to understand the meaning behind what we ask, not just the individual words we use.
The quote on the screen says it all, but let me give you an even better way to think about it. Before, Google's updates were like changing the tires on your car. Important, sure, but the car is still the same. Hummingbird was like ripping out the old gas engine and replacing it with a brand new, super intelligent electric motor. The entire system for how it works was fundamentally different from that day forward.
Okay, so how on earth did Google pull off this brain transplant? What was the magic behind the curtain? Well, it really all comes down to two revolutionary new abilities that it learned. So first up, we've got something called semantic search. Now, that sounds technical, but it just means Google finally learned that words have relationships. It could figure out that stamina and endurance are kind of the same thing if you're asking about running. You could also identify what are called entities, like it knew that if you typed Apple and iPhone, you meant the tech company, not the fruit. It started connecting the dots.
And the second breakthrough, this was a big one, conversational search. For the very first time, Google had a memory. You can see it right here. You ask about eco-friendly shoes. Then, as a follow-up, you can just say, what about boots? And Google remembers the context. It knows you mean eco-friendly boots near you. This one single ability is the granddaddy of every voice assistant we use today.
So as you can imagine, a massive technological shift like this completely changed the rules of the game online. For businesses, for bloggers, for anyone creating content, all the old tricks that were designed to fool a dumb keyword-matching robot, they pretty much became useless overnight.
The whole focus just did a 180. The old days of keyword stuffing, where you just cram a page with the same keyword over and over to rank higher, that was over. The new way to get seen was to create amazing, in-depth content that actually helped people by answering their questions completely. The message was loud and clear: satisfy the user, not the algorithm.
And look, this wasn't just some theory. Check out the real-world impact. We saw health blogs that stopped writing short, generic posts and started creating these amazing deep guides answering really specific questions. The result? An 80% jump in their traffic. Or how about a local restaurant that started optimizing for a simple phrase like "best pizza near me"? They saw a 60% increase in actual people walking through their doors. It proved that creating genuine value was the new currency of the web.
But here's the thing, Hummingbird's impact didn't just stop in 2013. Actually, it's more relevant today than ever before. Why? Because it wasn't just another update, it was the foundation, the literal bedrock for every single AI advancement in search that came after it.
You can see its legacy playing out right on this timeline. First, Hummingbird mastered user intent back in 2013. That was the absolutely essential first step. Then, that foundation allowed for RankBrain to use machine learning a couple years later for weird, ambiguous searches. And that paved the way for BERT in 2019 to understand the super subtle nuances of how we talk. Every step on this timeline was only possible because of the one before it, and it all started with Hummingbird.
And that, right there, brings us to the most important takeaway from all of this. The legacy of Hummingbird leaves us with one critical question, and it's for anyone building a website, writing a blog, or creating anything online today. In a world where search engines can actually think, are you creating content that provides real, valuable answers? Or are you still stuck in the old world, just collecting keywords? The answer to that question is going to define your success.